Most men are soft. They think breaking a man requires shouting, violence, confrontation, primitive thinking. Noise is for the weak. Power operates in silence. The majority cannot break anyone because they cannot even control themselves. They react, they explain, they seek fairness. They believe truth protects them. It does not. A man is not broken by force. He is broken by perception, by doubt, by controlled absence. He is broken when his internal certainty collapses. The masses misunderstand power. They think dominance is loud. They think cruelty is emotional. They confuse aggression with control. Only a minority understands. Control is quiet, calculated, patient. Machiavelli did not speak of morality. He observed mechanics. He saw that men are ruled by fear, hope, and self-interest. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." That is not cruelty. That is structure. You lose power the moment you react. You lose power when you defend yourself. You lose power when your emotions dictate your pace. Every explanation you offer is a confession of lower position. You were not defeated by others. You were defeated by your need to be understood. A man breaks when his reactions no longer produce results, when his anger meets silence, when his manipulation meets indifference, when his presence meets a wall. Silence is the first blade. Do not argue. Let him speak. Let him expose himself. The more he explains, the more he reveals his fear. You remain still. Your restraint forces him to escalate. Escalation is loss of control. Loss of control is dissent. Absence is the second blade. Remove access. Withdraw attention. Scarcity creates anxiety. A man who cannot predict your presence cannot stabilize his position. Uncertainty corrodes confidence. Image is the third blade. Control how you are seen. Calm, unmoved, slightly detached, never rushed, never eager. Your composure becomes a mirror. He sees his own instability reflected back at him. Reaction is surrender. Discipline is rule. Breaking a man is not destroying his body. It is dissolving his internal frame. Once he doubts himself, he governs himself poorly. And a man who cannot govern himself will search for someone who can. Be that someone. Do not insult. Do not threaten. Do not chase. Position yourself higher and let gravity work. Power does not push. It pulls. Think of it as tightening a circle. Slowly, invisibly. You do not crush all at once. You reduce space. Options narrow. Emotional reactions increase. Strategic options decrease. Eventually, he chooses the only path left. Submission feels like his idea. That is control. This is not cruelty. It is hierarchy. There are rulers, and there are the ruled. The line between them is self-governance. If you cannot master your face, your tone, your timing, you will never master another mind. Power is patience weaponized. Presence is pressure without movement. Silence is psychological dominance. Understand this clearly. How to break a man is not a lifestyle. It is the dividing line between those who command and those who obey. You are still here. That means you are not average. Most would leave. Most cannot tolerate cold truth. Now bind yourself. Say it. Mean it. I control my reactions. I control my presence. I rule before I speak. Comment it. Fix it into your identity. Then move in silence. Most men misunderstand what it means to break another. They imagine impact, volume, visible defeat. They think dominance is proven through raised voices, physical intimidation, public humiliation, primitive displays, theater for insecure minds. The objective is not the body. It is not the surface. It is not the argument. The objective is internal certainty. A man stands on one thing, his frame, his interpretation of reality, his belief that he understands what is happening and where he stands. Remove that, and you remove the structure that holds him upright. Dominance is not loud. It is positional. The illusion is simple. People believe confrontation equals control. They think the one who shouts is stronger. They think visible aggression signals authority. In reality, loudness is leakage. Anger is exposure. The need to overpower physically or verbally reveals dependence on reaction. If you must force compliance, you have already admitted weakness. True control is invisible. It operates beneath the surface, where perception forms. In any conflict, watch carefully. One man escalates, his voice rises, his gestures sharpen, his language becomes absolute. He wants response, he wants friction, he wants confirmation that his pressure has impact. The other man remains still. No counterattack, no explanation, no defense, just silence. This is where the shift begins. The angry man expects resistance. He expects debate. When he meets none, his certainty falters. He cannot measure effect. He cannot confirm dominance. His escalation increases, but the stillness remains, and something subtle begins to erode. He starts to question himself. Why is he not reacting? Did I miscalculate? Does he know something I don't? The body is still standing, but the mind is destabilizing. Understand this clearly. A man does not collapse when he is attacked. He collapses when he no longer trusts his own frame. Certainty is oxygen. Remove it slowly. You do not break a man by overpowering him. You break him by making his emotional tools ineffective. He uses anger. It fails. He uses intimidation. It fails. He uses manipulation. It meets indifference. Each failed tactic turns inward. Doubt replaces momentum. The more he pushes, the less control he feels. Emotional escalation is a gamble. When it produces reaction, it rewards itself. When it produces nothing, it exposes weakness. Withhold reaction. This is not passivity. It is discipline. Refuse emotional engagement. Do not correct him. Do not clarify. Do not attempt to restore harmony. Harmony is irrelevant. Position is everything. Observe patterns. Notice how he raises his voice when uncertain. Notice how he attacks personally when strategically cornered. Notice how he accelerates speech when he feels loss of control. Every reaction reveals structure. You remain unreadable. When you speak, you lower your voice. Slow the pace. Ask a short, precise question, nothing more. Then silence again. The contrast magnifies instability. He begins to look irrational, not because you label him so, but because you provide no fuel. The audience, if there is one, adjusts perception accordingly. Composure becomes authority. Escalation becomes fragility. Most men cannot tolerate silence. Silence forces self-confrontation. When you do not engage, he is left alone with his own emotional surge. Without opposition, it has nowhere to land, and emotion without impact turns against its source. The mistake the majority makes is believing they must win the exchange. They try to land the final word. They try to dominate visibly. They seek immediate resolution. Impatience is submission to emotion. Breaking a man is a long game. You are not seeking applause. You are eroding foundation. The first crack appears when he begins adjusting himself in your presence, when his tone shifts, when he hesitates before escalating, when he is no longer centered, he is calibrating to you. That is the beginning of fracture. You do not need to insult him. You do not need to threaten him. You do not need to overpower him. You only need to remain governed. The man who governs himself forces others to confront their lack of governance. If he cannot provoke you, he cannot control tempo. If he cannot control tempo, he cannot control the frame. If he cannot control the frame, he begins to question his position. And once a man questions his own position, he weakens himself. Your role is simple. Do not react. Do not chase closure. Do not compete in volume. Stand still while he destabilizes. Let his escalation reveal dependency. Let his anger expose fragility. Let his need for impact betray insecurity. You are not attacking. You are removing oxygen. In the end, the body remains intact. The voice may still function, the posture may appear strong, but inside, something shifts. He no longer trusts his own interpretation. He no longer feels certain of effect. He no longer feels in control of outcomes. That is the break, and it begins with your silence. The battlefield is not physical, it is perceptual. Most men lose before the conflict even begins because they fight over facts. They argue evidence. They defend intention. They believe truth has weight on its own. Truth is irrelevant without positioning. The hierarchy is determined by perception, not by what is correct, but by what appears controlled, not by what is fair, but by who seems stable. The weak assume that if they clarify enough, status will return. They over-explain, they justify, they provide context, they attempt transparency as if it is armor. It is not armor, it is exposure. Every explanation signals pressure. Every justification signals vulnerability. When you rush to clarify, you admit that perception is slipping beyond your control. And perception never defends itself. It is shaped, or it is shaped for you. In a workplace power struggle, this pattern becomes obvious. One individual is questioned in a meeting. He responds immediately. He speaks longer than necessary. He details every step, every intention, every constraint. His tone tightens. He wants the room to understand him. He wants alignment. He wants validation. He believes clarity restores authority. Across the table, another man sits still. He does not rush to speak. When questioned, he answers briefly. Controlled tone. No emotional coloring. No defensive posture. If something is unclear, he states, "We'll address that." Then he stops. He does not attempt to fill silence. The room adjusts unconsciously. The first man appears reactive. The second appears composed. Who holds the higher position? Perception outranks intention. Whoever controls the image controls the hierarchy. The majority think being right is enough. It is not. Being perceived as controlled is enough. Image is not vanity. It is strategic architecture. Your posture, your pace, your availability, your visibility. These elements communicate before you speak. If your movements are rushed, you appear pressured. If your tone fluctuates, you appear unstable. If you answer every message instantly, you appear accessible. Accessibility lowers perceived value. Scarcity elevates it. Control of perception begins with disciplined presence. You do not attend every discussion. You do not respond to every provocation. You do not correct every misunderstanding. You allow selective ambiguity. Ambiguity creates psychological pressure. When people cannot fully read you, they project. And projection often elevates what is calm and reserved. The more you speak, the more material you give others to reinterpret, distort, or challenge. Speak less than necessary. In meetings, answer the question asked. Nothing more. Do not decorate. Do not seek applause. Do not volunteer emotional cues. Let others overcommit verbally. Let them reveal urgency. Let them expose bias. You remain measured. In conflict, never chase narrative correction publicly. Public defense reinforces public doubt. If repositioning is necessary, do it indirectly. Shift context. Introduce new framing. Highlight results, not arguments. Results are perception anchors. Composure is visual authority. When tension rises, lower your voice. When accusations surface, slow your speech. When others escalate, reduce expression. The contrast reshapes the room's interpretation without a single direct attack. Most men try to dominate the conversation. Few understand that dominating perception requires restraint. You do not need to convince everyone. You need to maintain consistent image. Image is built through repetition of behavior, calm under pressure, brief speech, selective presence, unemotional responses. Over time, this pattern becomes identity in the minds of others, and identity becomes hierarchy. The mistake is thinking that reputation is built by defending oneself. It is built by consistency under scrutiny. When someone over-explains in a workplace conflict, the audience senses insecurity. Even if the content is accurate, the emotional tone overrides the facts. People respond to signals, not data. Your task is not to win arguments. It is to remain unmoved by them. Let others reveal their agenda. Let them talk longer. Let them display their need to control narrative. You control timing. You choose when to speak. You choose when to withdraw. You choose what remains unsaid. Silence is not ignorance. It is filtration. If perception is slipping, do not panic. Panic leaks through micro-expressions, speech, speed, posture. Instead, reduce exposure. Limit statements. Re-enter strategically with clear, concise positioning. Never attempt to repair status emotionally. Repair it structurally. Deliver results. Maintain composure. Avoid drama. Let time and consistency recalibrate the image. In the end, the man who controls perception does not look like he is fighting. He looks like he is observing. He appears unaffected, detached, slightly above the tension. That appearance becomes reality. Hierarchy is not declared, it is inferred, and inference is guided by image. Remember this without distortion. Perception outranks intention. Whoever controls the image controls the hierarchy. Do not defend truth. Shape perception. Emotional symmetry is weakness. Most men mirror the energy directed at them. Anger is met with anger. Urgency is met with urgency. Insult is met with retaliation. They call this authenticity. They call it strength. It is reflex. Reflex is control handed to another. The illusion is simple. Emotional expression equals power. The louder the reaction, the stronger the man. The faster the response, the sharper the authority. Immediate retaliation is mistaken for dignity. In reality, immediate reaction is submission to stimulus. If another man can trigger your emotion on command, he controls your nervous system. If he controls your nervous system, he dictates your pace. If he dictates your pace, he governs the interaction. The man who reacts reveals dependence. The man who waits dictates pace. Emotional asymmetry is the deliberate imbalance between stimulus and response. It is the refusal to mirror. It is patience weaponized against impulsiveness. In real life, observe the common scenario. One man attempts provocation. He questions competence publicly. He uses sarcasm. He presses with loaded language. His goal is not truth. His goal is reaction. Reaction validates his pressure. Reaction confirms influence. He expects pushback. He expects tension. He expects emotional heat. Instead, he meets delay, a pause, a neutral face, a measured inhale, then a calm, brief reply, or no reply at all. The imbalance destabilizes him. When you do not react immediately, you interrupt his rhythm. His emotional surge has nowhere to land. Without collision, it begins to feel excessive, even inappropriate. He escalates slightly, trying again. The tone sharpens, the words become more direct. You slow down further. You let silence stretch half a second longer than comfortable. You speak at a reduced tempo. You choose fewer words. The room recalibrates around your pacing. Impulsiveness feeds on speed. It thrives in rapid exchange. Patience suffocates it. The mistake most men make is believing that delay signals weakness. They fear that if they do not respond instantly, they appear intimidated. So they rush to defend, rush to correct, rush to attack. They preserve ego. They lose position. Measured delay is not hesitation. It is control of tempo. When provoked, do not answer the emotional layer. Answer only the structural layer, if necessary. If the attack is personal, respond with operational focus. If the tone is sharp, respond with neutrality. Better yet, let the provocation dissolve in silence. Strategic non-engagement is a weapon. Not every challenge deserves acknowledgement. Not every accusation requires defense. When you respond to everything, you validate everything. When you ignore selectively, you define relevance. A man seeking reaction grows uncertain when ignored. He begins to question his leverage. He may attempt stronger tactics. That escalation is exposure. Your responsibility is discipline. Slow responses. If confronted in conversation, do not overlap speech. Let him finish fully. Let the silence linger. Then respond in a tone slightly calmer than neutral. If confronted digitally, do not reply instantly. Urgency implies emotional investment. Delay creates ambiguity. Ambiguity creates psychological pressure. Measured tone. Your voice must not betray irritation. Irritation signals emotional capture. Keep volume steady. Keep pitch controlled. Avoid sarcasm. Sarcasm is emotional leakage disguised as wit. Deliberate pauses. Silence after a provocative statement forces the other man to sit with his own words. Many will self-correct. Others will over-explain. Both outcomes benefit you. Strategic non-engagement. If a comment is designed purely to provoke, do not dignify it with analysis. Continue with your agenda, shift topic, or end the exchange calmly. You seem upset. We can revisit this later. Then disengage. You are not retreating. You are refusing to enter his emotional frame. Emotional asymmetry creates vertical tension. He accelerates. You decelerate. He raises intensity. You lower intensity. He seeks validation through reaction. You deny it. Over time, this pattern conditions him. He realizes his tactics fail. He becomes cautious. He measures his words. He hesitates before escalating. That hesitation is submission to your pacing. Understand the deeper mechanism. Humans seek feedback loops. Emotional expression expects reinforcement. When reinforcement is removed, behavior weakens. If anger does not produce reaction, anger loses strategic value. If provocation does not destabilize you, provocation becomes self-destructive. Most men break not because they are attacked, but because their strategies stop working. Emotional asymmetry exposes the fragility of impulsiveness. You must govern your own impulses first. That is the cost. Your heartbeat may rise. Your ego may flare. Your instinct may demand immediate correction. You override it. Control is not absence of emotion. It is mastery of timing. Wait. Observe micro-expressions. Observe breathing patterns. Observe shifts in tone. The more he escalates, the more data he reveals. You gather. He spends. Eventually, he feels the imbalance. He senses he is pushing harder than necessary. He senses he appears reactive. He senses the room interpreting his intensity, and he adjusts. When a man adjusts himself around you, you have dictated pace. The world rewards the composed. In negotiation, the one who speaks first often concedes. In confrontation, the one who reacts first often descends. In tension, the one who waits often commands. This is not passivity. It is structured restraint. Emotional symmetry keeps you horizontal with your opponent. Emotional asymmetry elevates you. The man who reacts reveals dependence. The man who waits dictates pace. Remember it without distortion. Pace is power. Control pace. You control the game. Most men cling to presence. They believe authority requires visibility. They assume power must be constantly displayed, constantly asserted, constantly reaffirmed. They fear silence. They fear distance. They fear being forgotten. This fear exposes dependency. Constant presence does not maintain authority. It dilutes it. Familiarity reduces psychological weight. When you are always available, always responsive, always engaged, you become predictable. Predictability lowers perceived value. The illusion is simple. If I withdraw, I lose influence. If I disappear, I signal weakness. If I reduce access, I surrender control. In reality, controlled withdrawal is control intensified. Strategic absence is not emotional retreat. It is calculated removal of access to create imbalance. Absence creates gravity. What is scarce gains psychological weight. In social or relational dynamics, attention functions as currency. Most men spend it recklessly. Immediate replies, constant availability, continuous validation. They feed interaction without discipline. Then they wonder why they are not respected. Observe what happens when attention is removed without warning. In a relationship dynamic, one man is accustomed to immediate engagement. He provokes, he texts, he demands reassurance, he expects reaction. Previously, he received it. Then suddenly, he does not. Response time slows, availability narrows. Engagement becomes selective. No explanation, no drama, no announcement. Uncertainty enters. Why is he distant? Did I miscalculate? Did something shift? The absence forces internal speculation. Speculation generates anxiety. Anxiety redirects focus toward the one who withdrew. This is gravity. When you are constantly present, others measure you casually. When you become scarce, they measure you carefully. The majority misunderstand this dynamic because they confuse attachment with authority. They believe that being needed is strength. Being needed can be leverage, but only if access is controlled. If access is unlimited, you are not valued, you are consumed. Controlled withdrawal introduces asymmetry. In professional environments, this principle is even sharper. The individual who attends every meeting, answers every message instantly, and volunteers for every discussion becomes background noise. He is visible, but not significant. The individual who speaks selectively, appears strategically, and limits engagement becomes weighted. His presence signals importance because it is not constant. Silence between appearances amplifies perception. The fear of disappearance is rooted in insecurity. Men think they must constantly prove relevance. They chase visibility. They overshare updates. They over-participate. Power does not chase recognition. It regulates exposure. Limit accessibility. Do not answer immediately unless strategically necessary. Delay creates space. Space creates interpretation. Interpretation often magnifies perceived importance. Reduce availability. Your time must appear structured. If you are always reachable, you appear unstructured. Scarcity signals discipline. Create calculated scarcity. This does not mean emotional coldness. It means controlled engagement. You decide when interaction occurs. You decide duration. You decide depth. When someone attempts to provoke, do not escalate. Withdraw. When tension rises, do not explain. Pause communication. When respect declines, reduce exposure. Withdrawal forces recalibration. Most men panic during silence. They rush to fill it. They send follow-up messages. They attempt to clarify. They reveal insecurity through over-contact. You remain still. Absence is not disappearance from existence. It is disappearance from emotional availability. The destabilizing force lies in unpredictability. If your presence is consistent and automatic, others relax around you. They test boundaries. They assume stability regardless of behavior. If your presence becomes conditional, behavior adjusts. Conditioned access reshapes dynamics without confrontation. You do not need to argue about respect. You restrict access when respect declines. You do not need to demand appreciation. You reduce exposure when appreciation is absent. Over time, patterns emerge. People begin to anticipate that their behavior influences your availability. They moderate themselves. That moderation is subtle submission. Strategic absence also protects perception. When you are not constantly visible, fewer opportunities exist for misinterpretation, criticism, or challenge. You minimize unnecessary friction. You control when and where you are evaluated. Presence becomes event-based, not default. In high-level negotiations, powerful figures often delay responses intentionally, not to play games, but to preserve leverage. Time pressure destabilizes the impatient party. Withdrawal shifts pressure outward. Understand the deeper mechanism. Humans assign higher value to what is limited. Scarcity activates attention. Attention amplifies significance. Significance elevates status. When you are rare, you are discussed. When you are constant, you are assumed. Absence creates gravity. What is scarce gains psychological weight. Do not announce withdrawal. Announcements weaken effect. Silence preserves ambiguity. Let them interpret. Let them wonder. Let them adjust. Your responsibility is control, not reassurance. Strategic absence draws a line between ruler and reactive participant. The reactive man fears being forgotten. The strategic man knows disappearance is leverage. Regulate exposure. Withdraw without emotion. Return without explanation. Remain scarce enough to be valued. And watch how gravity shifts. Most men believe control requires commands. They imagine authority as direct instruction, orders given, compliance demanded, visible hierarchy enforced. This is crude power. Direct force creates resistance. Overt domination invites opposition. When you push openly, the other man feels compelled to push back to preserve ego. The illusion is simple. If I give the order, I am in control. If he chooses freely, he is autonomous. In reality, freedom of choice is often structured. Control does not require eliminating choice. It requires designing the field in which choices exist. When every path leads to you, resistance becomes irrational. Limiting options is refinement. It is architectural power. In negotiation or leadership environments, this principle separates amateurs from strategists. An amateur negotiator argues for a single outcome. He pressures, he insists, he repeats his position, he defends his demands. The other party resists, not necessarily because the demand is unreasonable, but because autonomy is threatened. A strategist does not demand. He frames, he presents three options. All three serve his objective. He does not say, "You must choose this." He says, "Here are the paths available." The tone is neutral, the delivery calm, the structure firm. Choice remains, but freedom narrows. The other party feels agency. In reality, direction is predetermined. This is not manipulation in the emotional sense. It is boundary definition. Define the context before the decision is made. If you allow the other man to define the field, you react within his architecture. If you define the field, he operates within yours. In leadership, this is subtle. A leader does not ask, "What do you want to do?" He asks, "Which of these two priorities should we execute first?" The strategic outcome is fixed. Only sequence is variable. The team feels included. The direction remains controlled. Limiting options reduces chaos. The mistake most men make is offering open-ended freedom. They believe openness equals fairness. They believe unlimited discussion signals strength. Unlimited discussion dissolves authority. Boundaries signal structure. In conflict, do not argue across infinite variables. Narrow the conversation. Define the issue. Restrict scope. We are deciding between A and B, not C, not D, not endless debate. When someone attempts to introduce alternative angles, redirect calmly. That's outside the current decision. You are not suppressing autonomy. You are controlling context. Context determines outcome more than argument. In negotiation, never reveal your full range. Never expose your lowest acceptable threshold. Keep internal flexibility private. Present structured limits externally. If you display desperation for agreement, leverage collapses. If you display clear boundaries, leverage solidifies. Limiting options also applies psychologically. If a man believes he can intimidate you, he will test that path. If he believes he can manipulate emotionally, he will pursue that route. Remove those options through consistent non-reaction. Over time, he recognizes those tactics fail. His behavioral options narrow. He adapts to your structure. Submission begins as adjustment. The deeper principle is this: autonomy is preserved when the illusion of choice exists. Total elimination of choice triggers rebellion. Guided choice triggers alignment. Control context. Control timing. Control framing. In high-level power dynamics, the most effective leaders rarely issue visible ultimatums. They create environments where the desired outcome appears logical, inevitable, and self-chosen. This reduces friction. When a man feels he chose the path himself, he defends it, even if the architecture was yours. The majority believe persuasion wins loyalty. Persuasion is unstable. It requires continuous reinforcement. Structural limitation wins stability. If every alternative outside your structure appears less viable, less attractive, or less accessible, alignment follows naturally. For example, in a business setting, instead of pressuring a client to accept a proposal, reduce competing variables, adjust timelines, present scarcity of availability, clarify boundaries around scope. You can proceed under these terms within this window, not aggressively. Simply stated, urgency combined with limited alternatives focuses decision-making. In personal dynamics, the same principle applies. If someone repeatedly disrespects boundaries, do not argue about respect. Define consequence quietly. If this continues, I disengage. Then follow through once. Now the field changes. He can continue behavior and lose access, or adjust behavior and maintain access. Two options, both within your architecture. Limiting options is not cruelty. It is strategic clarity. Chaos thrives where boundaries are undefined. Power thrives where structure is stable. The illusion of freedom often masks lack of direction. True authority does not suffocate choice, it channels it. The weak seek control through dominance. The disciplined seek control through design. Design the field. Reduce unnecessary variables. Define what is acceptable. Present options that serve your position. Remain calm while others believe they are choosing freely. When every path leads to you, resistance becomes irrational. That is the architecture of submission, not forced. Selected. Most men try to dominate with words. They believe persuasion is volume. They believe authority is measured in how much space their voice occupies. They speak longer to appear stronger. They repeat themselves to seem certain. This is insecurity, disguised as leadership. Dominance is not verbal, it is positional. The illusion is persistent. If I speak powerfully, I am powerful. If I out-argue, I outrank. If I fill the silence, I control the exchange. In reality, excessive language leaks intention. It exposes strategy. It reveals emotional investment. The man who speaks too much is negotiating with approval. Silent pressure operates differently. It does not chase agreement. It does not seek validation. It does not attempt to convince. It constrains the psychological space until the other man exposes himself. Silence is not emptiness. It is controlled psychological space. In a confrontational exchange, observe the imbalance. One man begins aggressively. He lists grievances. He questions competence. He escalates tone. He interrupts. He stacks accusations in rapid sequence. His objective is to overwhelm, to create momentum, to force reaction. The other man does not interrupt. He maintains posture, shoulders relaxed, chin level, eyes steady, breathing controlled. He does not rush to respond. He listens fully. When the attack ends, he allows a pause. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just enough to stretch discomfort. Then he speaks briefly. Are you finished? Or be specific. Few words, neutral tone, then silence again. The aggressor now faces something unexpected. No emotional collision, no defensive explanation, no reciprocal escalation. The space between words becomes heavier. Most men cannot tolerate heavy silence. It forces self-awareness. It forces them to hear their own tone. It removes distraction. In that space, insecurity surfaces. They begin to justify their aggression. They add explanations. They soften language. Or they overcommit further, exposing instability. Either outcome reveals data. Silent pressure extracts information without interrogation. Eye contact is not intimidation. It is steadiness. You do not glare. You do not challenge. You hold consistent, calm focus. Long enough to signal presence. Short enough to avoid theatrics. Your face remains neutral. Facial leakage is weakness. Micro-expressions of irritation, smirks, eye rolls, these betray emotional capture. They offer feedback. Feedback empowers the aggressor. Reduce expression. Stillness unnerves impulsiveness. In negotiation, silence after an offer creates pressure. The other party often speaks to fill it. They reveal concessions prematurely. They justify. They weaken their own position. The man who tolerates silence controls tempo. Minimal language sharpens authority. Short sentences, clear tone, no qualifiers. Not, I think maybe we could consider, but that does not work. Then silence. You do not decorate refusal. You do not apologize for boundaries. Most men fear appearing cold. They compensate with excess politeness. They soften everything. They add nervous laughter. They dilute impact. Politeness without structure erodes position. Composure without excess strengthens it. In confrontations, the louder side often believes they are winning because they are speaking more. They mistake activity for dominance, but observers read differently. They measure steadiness. They sense control in stillness. They notice who appears affected. The man who remains unreadable becomes difficult to attack. There is no visible target. Silent pressure also reframes hierarchy. When someone over-explains themselves to you, they place themselves lower. When someone attempts to persuade you emotionally, they assume you are judge. If you refuse to enter emotional exchange, you remain structurally superior. You do not need to say you are in control. You demonstrate it by not needing to react. Maintain posture. Physical stillness reinforces psychological stability. No fidgeting, no restless gestures. Controlled breathing. Stable stance. Allow the other to fill silence with insecurity. Humans project discomfort outward. When confronted with silence, they often interpret it as evaluation. Evaluation creates anxiety. Anxiety drives self-exposure. You become the mirror. They see themselves more clearly in your stillness than in their own noise. This is not manipulation through theatrics. It is restraint as strategy. Silence, eye contact, minimal language. These tools do not attack. They compress. Pressure builds internally within the other man. He begins to question tone. He recalibrates intensity. He moderates behavior. That moderation is subtle submission. The weak believe dominance is verbal. The disciplined understand dominance is atmospheric. The room shifts around the calm center. When tension rises and you remain stable, contrast amplifies perception. You appear higher without declaring superiority. Silence is not avoidance. It is containment. You contain your emotion. You contain the exchange. You contain the frame. Silence is not emptiness. It is controlled psychological space. Control the space. You control the man within it. Identity is not solid. It is narrative. Most men believe who they are is fixed. They speak of confidence as if it were permanent. They declare competence as if declaration secures it. This is illusion. Identity survives only while reinforced by evidence and perception. Remove reinforcement. Introduce contradiction. Doubt begins. The majority think breaking a man requires direct humiliation, public attack, open insult, visible challenge. Direct attack hardens resistance. Subtle contradiction dissolves certainty. A man breaks when the story he tells himself no longer matches reality. Confidence is a loop. He believes he is competent. His environment confirms it. He behaves accordingly. The loop strengthens. Disrupt the loop quietly. In a competitive environment, a rival often builds identity around perceived superiority, intelligence, experience, influence. He signals this constantly. He references past victories. He positions himself as standard. Do not confront this identity directly. If you say, "You are not that competent," he will defend. Defense strengthens his internal narrative. Attack invites consolidation. Instead, introduce contrast. Outperform quietly. Deliver results without announcement. Execute tasks he delays. Solve problems he complicates. Maintain composure where he escalates. Speak less while producing more. Comparison requires no commentary. Observers recalibrate perception gradually. If he prides himself on decisiveness and you begin making cleaner, faster decisions, the room shifts subtly. If he values intelligence and you ask sharper, fewer questions, attention redirects. He senses it before it is spoken. That sensing is the beginning of erosion. The mistake most men make is competing loudly. They try to defeat identity with argument. They debate qualifications. They challenge reputation. This is inefficient. Reputation collapses when reality contradicts it consistently. Identity erodes when the external mirror changes. Timing is critical. Do not attempt immediate displacement. Slow erosion destabilizes more effectively than sudden attack. Sudden challenge activates ego defense. Gradual contradiction bypasses it. In meetings, let him over-explain. Let him dominate discussion. When he finishes, summarize the core issue in one precise sentence. Then propose a concise solution. The contrast is visible. You do not say he was inefficient. The room concludes it. In leadership contexts, if he presents himself as emotionally strong but reacts under pressure, remain visibly stable. Lower your voice when he raises his. Slow your pace when he accelerates. Over time, his identity of control begins to crack internally. He will feel the mismatch before others articulate it. Self-image depends on coherence between internal belief and external feedback. Once feedback shifts, internal tension grows. He may attempt to compensate, increase aggression, reassert credentials, interrupt more frequently. Do not respond to the compensation. Continue steady performance. Identity erosion works through quiet exposure. Avoid direct attacks. Never insult competence. Instead, ask precise questions that expose gaps. Can you clarify the outcome? What was the measurable result? Not accusatory, just structured. If he cannot answer cleanly, doubt registers both internally and externally. The goal is not humiliation, it is destabilization. When a man begins to question himself, he becomes cautious. Caution alters behavior. Altered behavior signals insecurity. Confidence, once automatic, becomes calculated. That shift is fracture. Most men protect ego aggressively. They double down when challenged. But when challenged indirectly through comparison, ego struggles to locate the threat. There is no clear enemy, only contrast. Contrast is powerful because it does not accuse, it reveals. Over time, he may withdraw slightly, speak less confidently, hesitate before asserting authority, seek validation subtly. This is not coincidence. The narrative inside his mind has weakened. I am the strongest voice here becomes, am I still? I am the most capable becomes, why are they looking to him? Internal dialogue shifts tone. A man can withstand external criticism. He struggles against internal doubt. Identity is not destroyed in a moment. It erodes through repeated micro-contradictions. Your role is to remain disciplined. No gloating, no public celebration of superiority. Arrogance invites counterattack. Calm superiority invites quiet acceptance. If you appear threatened, he regains footing. If you appear steady and unaffected, the contrast sharpens. You are not trying to crush, you are replacing perception, replacing status, replacing narrative. Eventually, his behavior changes permanently. He moderates tone around you. He defers slightly. He hesitates before asserting dominance. That hesitation is not respect born of force. It is doubt born of inconsistency between who he believed he was and what reality now reflects. A man breaks when the story he tells himself no longer matches reality. You do not rewrite the story for him. You let reality edit it, quietly, relentlessly, without emotion. That is identity erosion. There is a line that divides men. It is not wealth, not status, not physical strength. It is self-governance. On one side, stand those who command their impulses. On the other stand those commanded by them. Most never notice the boundary because they live below it. They react, they justify, they chase validation, they speak when pressured, they escalate when provoked. Then they wonder why they are controlled. A man who cannot master his own reactions will always be mastered by someone who can. This is not morality. It is structure. Power does not begin with breaking another. It begins with refusing to be broken by your own impulses. If your anger dictates your tone, you are governed. If your ego dictates your responses, you are governed. If urgency dictates your pace, you are governed. And the governed cannot rule. Breaking a man psychologically is not about cruelty. It is about contrast. Your discipline against his impulsiveness, your silence against his noise, your patience against his haste, your structure against his chaos. But none of that is possible if you are internally unstable. The boundary is internal before it is external. You either control perception or you are defined by it. You either dictate pace or you chase it. You either design the field or you wander inside someone else's architecture. Power is not aggression. Aggression is visible insecurity. Power is regulation. Controlled breathing in confrontation. Measured tone under accusation. Reduced expression under pressure. Structured absence when disrespected. Narrowed options when boundaries are tested. These are not personality traits. They are disciplines. And discipline separates ruler from participant. The world does not reward intention, it rewards position. If you cannot hold position against emotional pressure, you will be repositioned by someone colder. This is the final clarity. Before you attempt to erode another man's certainty, ensure your own certainty is not dependent on approval, speed, or emotional victory. Master yourself first. Then your presence alone becomes destabilizing. Now bind this into identity, not as motivation, as command. Say it without emotion. Say it as structure. I control my reactions. I master my image. I dictate the pace. I reduce options. I remain silent under pressure. I rule myself before I attempt to rule another. Most men will hear this and do nothing. They will nod. They will agree. They will return to reacting, explaining, chasing relevance. They will remain governed. You will not. The first action of a ruler is immediate self-regulation. Control your face. Control your tone. Control your response time, starting now. Not tomorrow. Not after reflection. Now. The next provocation you encounter is your test. Pass it in silence. Understand what this is. This is not content. This is conditioning. If you consume these principles passively, you weaken them. If you apply them deliberately, you sharpen them. Every interaction is a field exercise. Every delay is leverage. Every withheld reaction is a shift in hierarchy. Do not share this with everyone. Share it only with those who demonstrate discipline. Weak men misuse power concepts as ego fuel. Strong men use them as structure. Know the difference. Align upward. This channel is not entertainment. It is a training ground. Here, perception is studied. Benefit is calculated. Control is refined. Power is practiced. If you seek comfort, leave. If you seek advantage, remain. Engagement is not support, it is commitment. If you understand the standard required, mark yourself publicly, not for applause, for accountability. Write the oath. I do not react. I regulate. I do not chase. I position. I do not explain. I control. Then prove it in behavior. From this point forward, move differently. Speak less. Observe more. Reduce availability. Narrow options. Let others expose themselves against your stillness. Stand above the noise. Cold, composed, unmoved. A silent axis around which lesser men rotate.